Right, welcome back. Thank you for staying with us on KTN Sunrise Live. And today we are talking about the referendum. Which is it? It has changed face and changed tack. And of course, you are the biggest part of this whole referendum process. And it is important that you understand what it is. What are you being asked to do by the various sides? We do know Deputy President William Ruto met the senators yesterday. They've since backed down. We'll be finding out why. Also, ODM had its NEC yesterday and they talked about this, and they've now changed tack a little bit. So now we want to find out what this means for you. Any questions that you have, and you've been sending them in from last night, keep them coming in. This is your chance to understand this issue, which promises to be the next battlefront between CORD and Jubilee. Send them in on Twitter at KTN Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara. You can also send us a quick SMS. That number is 8040. Please leave us your name and your location. So this morning, I'm glad to be joined by the Executive Director of ODM, Magerer. Thank you for joining us, as well as Senator Kipchumba Kormen. Thank you for making the time to be with us this morning. Let's start with you, perhaps, because we believe that's where the whole talk of referendum began, with the Senate. Tell us the initial idea of having a referendum.
The reason why we first talked about referendum was because of the breakdown in terms of the relationship between Parliament, that is the National Assembly, and Senate. The genesis was division of revenue bill. The bill was generated from National Assembly, forwarded as per the law, Article 110, our own consideration to Senate. Then we discussed, deliberated, considered, made amendments, and then submitted to National Assembly. When it reached National Assembly, Honorable Mbadi raised a point of order, in the House, and then went ahead to propose that we do not need that bill to come to Senate, that Senate has no role in division of revenue. As a result, the Speaker ruled that we didn't, just casually like that we didn't have a role in division of revenue, and then went ahead to forward the bill to the President. The President signed it to bill. So from there, we said we needed to make it clear the process of what bills goes to Senate and how that process can be done. We knew that changing Article 110, because it's a procedural requirement, did not need referendum. But we had the problem of, if you wanted to change it, you needed the goodwill of the two houses. The National Assembly was very hostile to that. So we thought, and for the proper functioning of the two houses and for Senate to perform its role to protect devolution, then we needed to bypass them and go to the amendment on popular initiative. The amendment on popular initiative would require public engagement. Now, when we went for that, we said we also want now to amend the functions of Senate. Now, the functions of Senate and the functions of National Assembly are anchored in the Constitution, Article 255, requiring referendum. So even if you go to popular initiative, you have to come back to referendum. Even if you use National Assembly process or Senate, you still have required to go to referendum. That was the reason why we said we want to go to referendum, to ensure that Senate has better institutional structure to protect the devolution.
Then the claims came later that that process was hijacked, and we'll get to that in a moment. Magerer, that is how it was began in the Senate, and it was an attempt to make the Senate have a greater say in the running of the counties and the relationship between the counties and the national government. Let's talk about the referendum then that ODM came up with. We know that has changed over time. Just give us a history of those events.
Yvonne, which referendum? I think principally ODM and the CORD has been very clear on the matter of devolution. And as the English people say, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. So you'll remember that it's about 4 or 5 months now since we had these institutions running. And probably the testing has begun, and we realized that there are areas, as Senator Kormen has been able to ably highlight, that they had issues. And perhaps we thought as a party we need to take the first initiative and join the senators to ensure that the protection of devolution was something that we did not allow to slide back. remember, we are bugged by the history of the first constitution of this republic, and how it was subsequently watered down, and so that fear is the background that we still have, and we believe that this time around Kenyans made a resolve that it should be able to work. Of course, in the course of the talking, we are not looking at only devolution as an aspect of that requires strengthening in this constitution. So perhaps you would hear voices, talking also about taking the current executive, to be answerable to the people. Looking at it the way it is now, it's a little bit difficult in terms of how do we make it accountable. Previous governments, we've had some of the cabinets sitting in Parliament, and they could be taken to task within the House. But as opposed to the current system now, which you are seeing, though it's a good system, but now we are there's a difficulty in trying to take the executive into account. So basically, those were just issues that people are looking at: the constitution, the implementation, and the running of government in general. But principally, there is nothing that ODM or CORD has changed in terms of the feeling. Only that we are saying the most important referendum now, or question that is on the table now, is about devolution. And despite the softening of stand by the Jubilee-aligned senators, I think the CORD senators and the whole fraternity are still for the referendum.
Okay. Allow me, though, to say Kenyans are confused, as you say, in the spirit of it, because you began first by saying you were against this so-called tyranny of numbers, and that you were proposing for a parliamentary system as opposed to presidential. We know that has backed down, but tell us about that, because you see Kenyans are saying, first we were being asked about a presidential versus parliamentary system. In addition to that, we also heard reports that Raila Odinga was pushing for 50% of the revenue from the national budget to, be pushed back. And we have heard of certain ODM members of parliament, including Chris Bichage, who says he does not agree with that one. So in essence, there are some fundamental things that you're asking Kenyans to do and have backtracked over the last week or two. Let's talk about that, particularly the parliamentary versus presidential.
First of all, Yvonne, there is nothing like a tyranny of numbers. I think it's just it's an expression that is being used to kind of intimidate some quarters. When you look at numbers, if you want to talk about numbers, we in CORD, we don't fear about numbers, because we believe we have numbers. So it's not about tyranny of numbers. And whenever we want to look at the implementation of the constitution, and whether that constitution by implementation alone serves our interests as Kenyans, does not really bring on board who wins or who did not win, and whether who boasts of numbers and who doesn't boast of numbers.
So let's talk about that change, though, because that was a statement that came out.
Number two, we have as a CORD, our leaders have mentioned some of the issues which are generally debatable, and I think even yesterday he made it very clear that Kenyans can still debate on the issue. We have not sat as CORD and now said this is what we are going to do. I believe we'll sit in future, but as of yesterday, the National Executive Committee of ODM sat and has made a decision. We expect our partner parties also will make the same decisions, and then as CORD now, we have one front to say definitely a referendum on this bit on devolution is ripe. It's ripe now. That's what we are saying.
Okay. I'll give you a moment first before we get into it, because you still haven't answered the question about
which one?
Presidential versus parliamentary. Kenyans would like to understand why we're not hearing that anymore, and why we've moved now to specifically matters of devolution, and what inspired that change. Let him assist you.
No, I don't want. Before you assist me, you will assist me as my brother. The issue is presidential versus parliamentary. Really is something that was I would say it was misunderstood from the word go in the way it was presented. Our thinking was what I've just talked about. How do we take the current executive into account? That's the basic reason. And you see, by that, by thinking about parliament, now a lot of people said now we are now changing, to parliamentary system. But parliamentary system is in our thought was just in a manner in which we need to take the current executive. You remember, they are not sitting in the house. They are all technocrats, and they are out. And the nearest they can come into being taken into account is to answer to committees of parliament, or maybe sometimes the majority leaders, whether in Senate or National Assembly, trying to give a feedback on an issue that has been raised in the House.
So is that a system you support?
We are saying we are looking at how do we haven't yet framed anything about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me assist you. First of all, let's go back. I'd like to keep, first of all, within the script. We came up with this proposed amendment. By the way, as we speak, there is a crisis between the two houses. And I've said this several times, and I said even that it can lead to a constitutional crisis because the bills that need to come to Senate have not come. There are now about almost 20 bills that the Speaker of National Assembly has casually, and we don't want to beat around the bush, has casually dismissed as bills that do not concern counties. They include agriculture, even marriage. Already the Constitution says in Schedule 4 Part 2 that culture is a function of counties, and marriage has a concept of what culture does and so forth. So all these bills was actually what angered Senate, because you have a process that is already provided in Article 110.3 that says that all bills must be processed through the two speakers before being tabled in either house. When one speaker in the National Assembly makes that casual decision, then it means that basically it's trying to render the functioning of the Senate irrelevant. Now, the relationship between and let me tell you, the engineers of the problems we have are code. Honorable Mbadi, unless he has quit code, Honorable Mbadi, Honorable Millie Odhiambo were the originators of the argument that Senate, all Millie Odhiambo in public was saying that we are idlers and old people who should not have been sitting in Senate. In fact, all those stories, that came to the breakdown of the two houses was a collective decision of National Assembly led by our brothers who come from CORD as against the Senate. So that beating of working, we then realized that if this continues, it would hamper the ability of Senate to be able to deliver. And myself, Kindiki, a number of us argued that we needed to bring together the leadership of the both houses to solve this problem. Yes. Now, initially, we never got that deal of trying to bring together the two speakers and the two leadership of the House. The issue of resources going to 40% was not there at all. You remember? Yeah. The question of hankering money was brought by governors later. And I don't think we need it. We don't need it in every democracy in the world that has two levels of government. They don't need to state which amount of money, because once the two houses are working, there is something called costing and unbundling of functions. Today, you will give Elgeyo Marakwet 3 billion. Tomorrow, Elgeyo Marakwet will discover a resource, and the law says, for example, oil, and then we have said 20% of the resources from the oil in Elgeyo Marakwet remain Elgeyo Marakwet. Yes. You don't need to give Elgeyo Marakwet the 3 billion. You could reduce it and give it the revenue from the resources coming locally. Nairobi could generate more resources going forward. So you reduce the amount of money you give them from the national location. So people who talk about structures forcing numbers to revenue allocation do not understand how it works. And by the way, it is not national government that allocates money to counties. It is not. It is the two parliaments which allocate money to the two levels of government. Okay. And the only money that is allocated is the revenue raised. You don't allocate loans and you don't allocate budgets. Now, Jubilee wrote in its manifesto, and I was part and parcel of this manifesto. A number of us who were working with Jubilee then, we said we'll work progressively to going to 40%. In the first year, we have done 32.5% of the revenue raised nationally based on the last audited accounts, as the Constitution says in Article 203. But
so
dishonesty then on the other side of our brothers, and that's unfortunate, and this is the reason why the story changed tact, is because you have had them talk about 12%, 11%. I mean, no amount of money below 15% can be allocated. It's unconstitutional.
Okay, that is there in the Constitution. And we'll get to that. But you've talked about the numbers not necessarily being, you don't agree with that. And we had Raila Odinga saying that yesterday, that he doesn't think that the 210 billion amounts to 32%.
Of course it doesn't. What it means is the Constitution, the way it's written, provides for what Senator here is trying to, to put across. Looking at the last audited accounts and approved by Parliament, that was done in, I think, 2010. When you look at the budget of 2010, you will realize it is 50% of the current budget, and that is part of the issues that we are saying we need to relook into in terms of going forward. How do we ensure that we are talking the same language? At least, and Parliament can still choose for the next 5 years not to approve any audited accounts, so that the last audited account remains at 2010. I don't think there's a constitutional mandate that they have to do it every certain period. But that's why they have not done since 2010. We have two audits, whatever, which have been presented, but they have not been approved.
No, there's only one. Because that one is 2010, 2011.
Yes.
The next one is 2011, 2012.
Which is now being considered.
Yes.
And so the remaining one is 2013, which is this.
So there are two. That's what I'm talking about. There are two.
It can't be.
It hasn't been presented to Parliament.
Would you expect that revenue to be done on audit accounts that have not yet been audited? Because the last one they're going by is 2010, 2011. But now 2011, 2012 has not yet been done.
Part of what we want to strengthen in the change within the Constitution is how do we then put a figure that commensurates to what is happening now, because the Jubilee government is working on 1.6 trillion budget, and you want us to refer to audits,
what would you like us to refer to now?
Kipchumba,
because we don't have other audited budgets as opposed to 2010, 2011.
That is why I'm saying.
So what is your proposal?
That's why we are saying we are looking at possibly amending some of these provisions within the Constitution to enable it, move with the time. We cannot say, we cannot get stuck on 2010 and argue that that is what the Constitution provides. Yes, it is what it provides.
It provides the
but
last
is that the
audited
best?
accounts.
Is that the best? Yeah, that is it.
Okay.
Can I interject? First of all, when I asked that time, and my Honorable Mbadi, I wish he was the one sitting here, is my friend. When I went to him and asked Mbadi, why are you bringing all this problem? It will bring a crisis in the country. He said, let Jubilee suffer. It was like it was.
That one now is a talk between friends.
That's okay.
We really cannot take it.
Let me explain why. Because these amendments that they are talking about do not need a constitutional referendum. Read Article 255. Changes on Article 203 does not need a referendum. So if Code really believes these things, they would have introduced them in Parliament, any day.
Let me tell you.
Code cannot be one person.
Let me tell you.
Code cannot be one individual. If Code is having an issue with this issue, they would have amended the National Assembly. But let me explain this. The thinking of many of the Code legislators when they're talking about 40% and so forth is a CDF thinking. You don't think in terms of cut this amount of money, go divide. You have to think about the constitutional structure. The process is called finance follows functions.
Yes.
That is why yesterday you had the Deputy President saying Senate is now going to lead the process of unbundling. We haven't even unbundled the functions. And then you cost the functions. Once you do the two things, then we'll be able to say that this amount of money is needed for counties to run their affairs, this amount of money is needed for national government to run its affairs, but all of them cannot get all the old money. Why? Because usually you budget higher than what you can get. So the National Assembly will now, and the Senate will make a decision and say, Senate, national government will get this much, county governments will get this much.
Right.
By the time you're doing even the calculation of percentage is irrelevant because you will have costed and unbundled the functions.
Okay, here's the thing. Do we need a constitutional referendum, or can we just have an amendment?
You see, we were, as we are looking at the whole aspect of devolution, it's not only one area. So we are saying what will enable devolution function as it is envisaged by Kenyans in their own constitution. So one of them would definitely be what we are saying, and we are looking at the whole package. But the areas that will require referendum, definitely we will get into that. We are going to talk about referendum. We are still believing that we need to strengthen Senate. The arguments that my friend here is trying to, and I need to correct you. If I remember, the person who talked about Senate being a house of retirees was Mithika Linturi, and I don't think Linturi has come to code unless you're telling me he has. So the fact of the matter, no, you know you are talking to a national television. You need to communicate correctly. Secondly, on the matters that we feel the Senate must be strengthened. And you see, it is not about friends. We don't want Senate to operate at the whims of, since, the Jubilee government has goodwill or no goodwill, or people are friends, you and the Senate and the National Assembly, they have good cordial relationship. No, we know Kenyans. We know where we have come from. So we are better off when we have something that is clearly stated within the Constitution that this is the percentile. The 40% we are talking about, already is monies that has been factored. If you look at the government budget, even last budget, the 15% plus other functions, which the national government is still holding behind.
Which is okay.
Like the roads, the issue of the roads, the national government is still holding. Some of these roads are class D, up to going F, I think, which are supposed to be cattle dips, cattle trucks or something. But those roads, the money that is supposed to develop such facilities like those roads are still being held by the national government. What we are saying is this budget, which has already been reflected within the national budget, can the function be sent to the counties? Because I don't really believe that the national government has any business going to Marama Road in some county when we have a county government.
All right.
Can I add something to that? Yeah? Transfer of functions is not a function of national government. It's a function of Transition Authority and us, Senate. The functions that are being given to counties, any county that has a problem with the functions given to them has a right to appeal to Senate. That is Article 23, Section 23 of Transition to County Government Act, and we are waiting for their appeal. When it comes to the question of, and Magerer has put it very clearly, first of all, we have moved it to 32% without any requirement of amendment. We can even move it to 50% without requirement of amendment. Let's just do the scientific and statistical work of ensuring that we've costed and unbundled and cost the functions. But more importantly is that, when it comes to this issue of transfer functions, let me give the example of roads. The challenge with roads is that we have a Roads Act that needs to be amended. That act enables us to collect roads levy. That roads levy cannot be collected by declaring the act unconstitutional. So what we need is to amend the act. And he was a member of parliament. When they were in parliament, they ensured that they formed constituency committees for delivering 22% of the money that come through the roads levy. So we need to amend that act so that then we transfer the resources accordingly. It has nothing to do with the Jubilee government. It has everything to do with us in parliament. If Magerer, because you need to understand what decision we made yesterday. The decision we made yesterday was that the question of allocation of resources does not need a referendum. It needs basically the costing and transfer functions. And if you are so hell-bent to make an amendment, you didn't need to go to referendum, because that's an amendment that can be done to referendum. Two is that to facilitate the better working of the two houses, the leadership of the two houses have to work together, find and hammer a solution. We lead the process now. Then thereafter, we can amend Article 110.
Okay.
Article 110 about how bills will move from both houses. Again, it doesn't need a referendum.
All right. Here's one thing, perhaps, from their end, and let's see that argument from their point of view, that yes, now it's 32% of the funds that have been allocated, but you see, the Jubilee Manifesto says 40%.
Yes,
that is fine.
Yeah.
However, perhaps with them, it's let it not be the Jubilee Manifesto, who knows which party we will have after 2017, and that let it be anchored in law, as opposed to it being about the goodwill of the Jubilee Manifesto, for example. What do you say to that argument?
I am saying that those are people who do not understand devolution. Now I'm speaking not on behalf of Jubilee. The working of devolution does not require a fixing of any number. Anywhere in the world, whether it's US or whatever federal states, you just need to do costing and unbundling of functions. Then you give everybody money based on their function they are dealing. In fact, there are situations where a particular national government function, national government will say, we don't want to do this function, we transfer. That's Article 187. You can transfer that function, transfer the money, so it can go even to 60, 50%, depending on the. And in fact, you know, many people forget one thing. Counties also have the capacity to raise resources. In terms of the principle of equity, if there is a county X that has more money, they will be denied a greater allocation from the national so that it can go to another one which is marginalized. You get what I mean? So this thinking about only imagining that you will use CDF model to do that is not necessary. Two, is that if indeed we have to do that amendment, and both sides are in agreement, you don't need a referendum. You just introduce it in Parliament.
But then ODM does not have the majority in Parliament.
They don't have to have majority. You introduce it first, let it fail. So that you can be able to say.
Here's another one. Before we get to you, Magerer, you mentioned the fact that the functions of the Senate also need to be strengthened, which was part of what you had been talking about in the referendum. And so now everybody says, now when you're backing down from the referendum, aren't you missing out on that opportunity to take this to the Kenyans and say, we're asking you to help us strengthen the Senate and thereby help the process of service delivery? And so by backing out, what message does that send to the people? Because now you're saying it's not about money, but you've backed out from the referendum altogether.
That is a very good question. We have sacrificed, for now, as a Senate, our initial position that we wanted to ride on all other issues to be able to say we harmonize and increase our functions. And the reason is simple. We got a betrayal from our friends from court. We agreed, and
because it was bipartisan in the beginning.
Yes, exactly. I was in the Legal Affairs Committee. We agreed that let's work on the amendments quietly, and it's still a function that is still in our committee. It hasn't even gone to the House yet. Let's work on the amendments. Once we get them, let's walk to the President and consult with him. Let's walk to the opposition, the former Prime Minister and the former Vice President, and their minority leader in Senate, Wetangula. We sit down together and even talk to Wetangula about it. Then we carry the nation together. Even if both sides agree, we don't need polarization. We don't even need campaigns. We just do normal civic education, civil awareness about the issues, and then we vote. Now, while we were doing that, they went to Homa Bay and Kisumu. And he just made an announcement that, one, we are going to have parliamentary system of government, confuse the nation. Two, and most important, Orengo, who was part and parcel of the deal of bipartisanship, announced that while Ruto is in Hague, we want to get an explanation of what's happening here. Now, we started getting being aware that actually now the objective is to have a polarized campaign process while the other case is going on. Then we will have a situation where the country is ungovernable. We hadn't, and let me be very clear, as a House, we had not even decided when will be the referendum. So they stole from us and said we are moving to referendum. Initially we had two options: either do it in between, or we do it during the next elections, so that it becomes the ballot box number 7, to vote for referendum-related issues. Again, they hijacked that. Because of that polarization and the environment where it is, we said, let's take advantage of the provisions within the Act. First of all, because we lead both houses, let's work on the relationship with both houses. That is diplomatic. Two, let's amend Article 110. Which can be done by Parliament itself, to make it clear how bills will be moving from both houses. Once that is done, we can be able to salvage that position. And then as we move forward, if the two houses work together, because when it says, my interpretation, and most of us in Senate, is that when it says bills concerning county, almost every bill concerns county except the money bill. Every bill, marriage, whatever, it's agriculture, all those functions. If that is achieved by amending Article 110 without going to referendum, we'll have saved the nation for the time being. If it is nothing become now clear in future, then we take it at an opportune time.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you say about hijacking, allegations of hijacking the
Kipchumba
process?
here. He's been talking like it's a resolution of Senate that they back down. You should make it very clear that that is the Jubilee-aligned senators, and you have your right. You have your right. Yes, you see that thinking of the majority. You think the majority. That is why this constitution carried an amendment provision of a popular initiative. Yeah, so we as a party, we feel that our interests may not be really taken care of by the processes that he's trying to talk about here. We have a right as Kenyan citizens and a political party to go to the people of Kenya, because those are the people who are, they are the people. They are the owners of this country. We are only, at this level, people are just exercising some power that has been given by the people. So there's absolutely nothing wrong for us to ask for a referendum. The second thing is, if we want to fully realize the fruits of this devolution, we cannot wait until it is too late to start saying we need to correct this 5 years later. Remember, this constitution, Yvonne, has been implemented now. This is the 3rd year, going to the 4th year, since 2010. So, Jubilee government should realize that they are not the first ones to start implementing this constitution. It has been implemented even by the last coalition government. It will still continue. However, the constitution itself gives a period of about 5 years for most of those changes that are supposed to be, to take place, right, to realize the effect of the new constitution are in place. So we think that we are in time when we say that this is the opportunity. We just need to correct it so that as we move on, let us have a
all right.
full
Allow me to ask this one, because Kenyans are generally confused now. And this goes back to the question I'd asked earlier, and hopefully now we can get a conclusive answer. We've had, and we're hearing the statements from court leaders. We're hearing it from former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, from James Orengo, even from Anyang' Nyong'o, who's the Secretary General of ODM Party. And we hear about the presidential versus the parliamentary. We hear Raila Odinga saying, no, actually now we want 50% of that. And then we hear a couple of other people saying, no, we don't agree with that. And then now we're hearing, okay, we want to make it 40%. Do you think that with all this mixed messaging, that Kenyans perhaps now are not clear on what exactly this referendum is supposed to be about, and yet it will be the Kenyans that will go to the ballot?
I think you're deliberately also not understanding something, because I've said, initially, we have several issues looking at the whole constitution, but we have, for purposes of making progress, we have said we'll focus on the devolution part of, the referendum, and that should be very clear. I don't see anything that's not clear about that.
Well, actually, it's my viewers who are asking that. So that means that some Kenyans are confused. My question is not about, now it is clear, 40%.
Yes.
But my question is, do you think that mixed messaging that we have heard in the last 10 days or so jeopardizes the main message that you are putting out there? Okay.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you.
That's why we moved to correct it yesterday.
Can I add something? Can I add something? The first 1 week after we came to Parliament, court talked about parliamentary system. So that's their baby. They are looking for every way. In fact, I'm not convinced that once whatever they form as devolution related, that they are not working towards sneaking it. That was their baby from the word go. And it didn't even start with them. It started, they asked the National Assembly members to talk about it, and the senators, their parliamentary group. And they have been carrying that baby along. They are now wondering, they didn't even know that you don't need referendum to do the 40%. I think they're hearing from me for the first time. and it's important to realize that even the problem we have with the system now, Yvonne, is the polarization of the country. The reason why we have saved some of our amendments is to avoid a situation where we polarize the nation. We've had elections after every 2 or 3 years since 2002. Remember 2002, 2005, 2007, 2010, 2013, and you want to do 2014. Really. The environment out there does not allow us, it's not so conducive for clear amendment. In fact, there's nothing that stops members of National Assembly from coming with another referendum. Because let me tell you, what Magerer is saying here is different from what the MPs in National Assembly are talking about. And they are united. The 350 MPs from both Court and Jubilee are united against certain things. Yeah, and so the only solution we can be able to achieve to avoid, because we will have National Assembly doing their own things, we can still have Jubilee doing their thing, the senators for Jubilee doing another one, senators for Court, and the country will not be in the same, and we will not be able to achieve. Who will suffer most if this referendum is taking place? The institution that will suffer most is the county governments. Because the Constitution talks about them going through a transition process of 3 years. They've just formed a government. They don't even have county public service yet.
Yes.
Yeah, you have the governor and the ward reps going to go to campaign. Who will do the local legislation and pass many counties, including mine, have not adopted yet the county integrated development plan. The first ones, most likely will be ours, is on this Friday, and a few others.
Okay.
Now, if you do this, distract them to go to referendum, the institutions that will suffer most will be the county governments.
All right.
Article 96 says that our responsibility as Senate is to protect counties. In the interest, the decision we made yesterday was in the interest of ensuring that the counties take place and devolution succeeds.
Okay, all right. Here's a question, Magerer. Why referendum now, 6 months after an expensive election? We have another one. Emmanuel Simiyu asking, who will fund the referendum? Do you think the people that you're asking to participate in this are ready for it so soon after the last general election?
Yvonne, what I want to say is that I don't think there's a timeline that is provided for in the event that you want an amendment. If an amendment is a necessity, then you just follow the Constitution, and the Constitution says you can amend the Constitution in a certain way, whether through referendum or through popular, two-thirds vote within the Parliament, or whatever. So really, the issue of a time, to me, it does not provide, like you have to stay 6 months, 1 year.
That is well understood. And even the CIC chair, Charles Nyachai, says, you are well within your right to seek a referendum. My question was, do you think the persons that will be participating in this referendum are ready for it? As opposed to time and the law and the Constitution, we are clear on that. You have a right to go through that. But my question is, do you believe that the mood of the country, of the registered voters who will participate in this, is ripe right now?
Yeah, if it is to make things, to correct things which perceivably they are being seen, they are not going on well, I don't think that Kenyans will shy away from it. Kenyans are ready.
A few of them are already.
Kenyans are ready.
So what is the message you would give to them now? Because let's just address their feeling. These are not my perceptions, but these are tweets and messages that are coming in. What message will you give them, after a costly election, and they will again be the ones who will be funding it? Emmanuel asks, who will? Well, at the end of the day, it all comes back to the taxpayers. Yeah. So what message are you telling them now about carrying them with you through this process?
The main thing that we are telling them is that they voted for a constitution, and they need to realize the full benefits of that constitution. If there is something that we feel, in our opinion, that is hindering them from realizing the proceeds of this constitution, then it is our responsibility as a leadership to be able to to seek their approval, to try and make correction on the same. So basically, that is the message. It is for their benefit. It is going to enhance devolution and increase resources that go to Mwananchi. Forget about these arguments that seek to retain the situation the way it was, before the new constitution was promulgated.
Can I say something? First of all, to us, and the reason why we made a decision yesterday is because we did an opinion poll. It may not have been scientific, but testing across the country, even in Kisumu, even in Mombasa, places where we have got governors and got senators and so forth, the people told us that we are not ready for another polarized campaign, at this moment. And sometimes you make a decision and say you don't want to throw away the baby and the bathwater. Yeah, you tell yourself, if this is defeated on an account of greed on our side, as we just want to give ourselves power and so forth, we will put ourselves in trouble. We haven't said that we will never amend the constitution in the near future, but the timing is very important. Two, and most importantly, is that Kenyans voted for Jubilee in 2013 April, and that March, and that decision, one of the things they voted for is 40% of the money going to counties. You get what I mean? And therefore, they are wondering why did CORD have just to pick Jubilee manifesto? And yet, this is something they never mentioned in their manifesto. It is an afterthought.
Let's hear from Magerer.
And let me complete something that I understand their opposition. And by the way, if you're in opposition, you are bound to be idle, The only thing you are going to look for is to look for something that can give you momentum to take over office in 2017. And that momentum is what they are trying to get, some issue that will keep them busy, but also distract us from delivering the promises we made from the people. But we don't want to aid in that very unnoble process.
Okay, let's ask the executive director, William. What was in the manifesto regarding...
First of all, let me correct this insinuation and the situation that Kipchumba is trying to put across here, that we have nothing to do, and the reason why we are just we are not making noise, my friend. And if you think we are making noise, just wait and see. Wait and see. The fact that Jubilee is in government does not mean it is a know-it-all government. This is a government of the people, and we are part of this republic as CORD. By the way, we also have supporters who supported the CORD course.
We know that.
So you cannot ignore that. And of course, notwithstanding the clouds, around the general election of 2013, which I really don't believe in myself, you don't have to push CORD, to an extent that you can actually say here that we are an opposition, we are trying to create a momentum. To me, that is destructive. You are trying to move away the minds of people from what exactly the matter is. And we have said the matter is there is a weak Senate, and you have just confirmed it yourself. And the only way to make that Senate strong, for it to be able to deliver on its mandate, is to strengthen it. There is no other two ways. There are no two ways about it. I know you were talked to in a usual way, that you either go to State House, you now go to Karen, I don't know where you are going next time, and you are talked to, and you come out saying that now we have agreed to do ABCD. It's understandable. It's understandable. But let Kenyans know that it's about resources that must be taken back to them. It is not resources that are being returned.
Can we get out this thing about resources? Can we get away from the resources argument, because it doesn't need referendum?
Okay, all right.
So let's do away with that.
Okay, that is understood. But and let's just pick up on that, because you say the idea of the referendum, and both you and Senator agree that it's to strengthen the Senate.
Yes.
What else in the referendum that you're pushing besides the 40%?
We also want to look at. He's touched on it, the transfer of functions, and quite a number of functions have been transferred, and basically that's supposed to go with the resources, and whether or not mathematically the resources that are supposed to accompany some of those already transferred functions has been done is something that we can compute. I can't give the figures now, but also look at education, for example, and within the the Constitution, it only provides that counties can only deal with the nursery schools, is it? Early childhood. They are calling it early childhood, and some village polytechnics, I don't know what they are, that kind of thing. So we just want to put it clear that if it is also devolving, some functions of education, especially the primary aspect, then it also needs to be changed. And if you look at the functions of the national government and the county government, they have only devolved the nursery schools, the early childhood. We feel that we also need to devolve a part of that education function.
Okay, let's talk about the role of the Senate now, because that was my initial question. In your referendum, are there proposals of how to strengthen the Senate?
Yeah.
What are those proposals?
Of course, we are still working on it. We are still working on it, and of course, I'm not a lawyer like my friend here.
I know, but you are the executive director of the party.
Yeah, but I cannot give you what is not conclusive. I can only tell you we are working on it. It's a matter of time.
When will it be
It is on. Even this afternoon, we're having a meeting with a group of lawyers to be able to look at what exactly are we talking about, to package it, so that maybe going forward you will also not hear these confusing messages, because we will have now refined even to attempt to put what the referendum question is going to be like.
Here's a question though. Who will conduct the referendum?
IBC.
Who will conduct the referendum, Magerer?
Yeah, of course, it's IBC.
Okay. Recently, you have made statements. Raila Odinga has made statements calling for the disbandment of the IEBC, saying he has no faith in it carrying out a general election. In fact, for 2017, the referendum is tantamount to a general election. It is a huge operation. If a few months ago, CORD was calling for the disbandment of IEBC, and now you have the confidence in having the same IEBC conduct the referendum, what are your thoughts on that?
We don't have confidence in IBC at all. And you see, as an institution...
So why call for a referendum now?
As an institution, we don't have a problem with it. But we said we need to review how they conducted the last election. But again, you see, that's another issue which as CORD we have also put on the front line, that how do we reform the current IBC to be able to...
Why don't I suggest something to CORD? That also they add that in the referendum.
Yeah, who told you it is not going to be added?
Exactly. Now this is what I'm saying, Yvonne. Exactly. You see, these people have they have an exhausted grudge with the Constitution, and it has nothing to do with the working of the Constitution. It has something to do with doing everything possible to get CORD to power.
All right. Okay. Let's get back to that. Let's get back to that, though, Magerer. If you have no confidence, calling for the disbandment of commissioners of the IEBC is tantamount to disbanding the whole of that. But my question is, do you have faith in this IEBC, in which you said did not conduct the March 2013 elections as it should be disbanded before 2017? Are you confident then that they will do a good job with the referendum?
We have looked at how IEBC conducted the last election. We have even read the Supreme Court ruling on how IEBC did the whole thing, and of course Kenyans are still discussing in terms of so what happens. You have also seen some of these officials in the IBC being taken to question in terms of their integrity. So it's not really us who are saying that per se, but as an interested partner, we say that this particular body, constituted as it is now, needs reform for it to be able to conduct future elections.
So do you want to constitute IBC first before the referendum?
That one can be done by changing a few, probably proposing a few amendments on the law governing elections.
So will that be done before the referendum or after?
Definitely. The date of referendum has not even been
that is fine,
set. Yeah.
But in your grand plan of that,
we feel
because if you have created a minimum
reform is basically required to enable IEBC to be able to conduct the referendum.
All right. In everything that you've said that you're meeting with your lawyers today to talk about strengthening the Senate.
Yeah. You've just drafting the whole thing about.
That's fine. And you've just not necessarily ruled out having a constitutional amendment in the constitution of IEBC. Again, what is that one clear message? Because it just seems like
it's minimum reform. Within the IEBC. Because there are some areas which really, there are some areas which we, as CORD, we feel that IEBC also sinned by omission, that kind of a thing, and commission. So definitely it's a whole raft of things.
What are you not ruling out in the referendum?
What do you mean?
You just said it yourself.
That what am I not? What am I not ruling out?
Here's when Kipchumba said that perhaps you can have that as part of your referendum, the constitution of IEBC. When we talked about
why don't you allow us to complete the framing of what we want to do, rather than just pushing us to throw away one or two things?
Because I've been patient with him. Can I say something? CORD is going to change. If they're given a chance, they will overhaul the constitution.
That's not true.
Let me say the truth. The parliamentary system of government is just overhauling the constitution. It's not an amendment. Yeah. Now you've heard they want to deal with IBC. They want to do some things to do with Senate, which they are not sure for now. They want to deal with the question of everything. If I suggest now that what about appointment of commissioner, they will say even that one. If I suggest something, they will say even that one. What we do, because, and this is important, let's not confuse the people. Let the issues crystallize. Yeah, as it was the Prime Minister then during the Yes campaign who used to tell us that once you wear the shoe, you know where it pinches, and then you can now be able to adjust. We haven't even worn it enough to be able to say that we haven't even started working with it to see where it pinches. So what we need to do
this is the third year, Mr.
is to allow, and particularly on the matters of devolution. We have only 4 months since we have county governments. Let's first allow all of them to come. Yeah, all those issues that perhaps will be, see what happens to county assemblies, see what the relationship, we've seen now the relationship between governors and county assembly members. They have certain challenges, and we're going to make amendment to acts, not constitution, to assist them. Let's see all of them happen. And then immediately, once we have all these issues, we agree at any particular time in future when it's ripe, in an unpolarized manner, to say that to adjust to 1, 2, 3, let's now do an amendment. But to allow our brothers who are in a fishing expedition to just do guesswork for purpose of building a momentum. By the way, when you were auditing Jubilee 100 days, we should have asked court what they have done in 100 days.
We did.
Yeah, because
and we had him here. And
because these people, instead of providing an alternative, even in the National Assembly, because if they had stood for certain things in the National Assembly, perhaps we would not have had this relation between the National Assembly and the Senate going down. So they haven't really provided an alternative, focused, firm, clear leadership. They are just copy and pasting. Like now they're copying our 40% in the manifesto and wanting to create a momentum for constitutional amendment when we are reaching there without even constitutional amendment.
Okay. I'd like us to close our discussion this morning and to just first of all get clarity on the issue of the referendum. And like I'll continue to tell you this, a lot of people continue to be confused. Samuel Kevin saying some confusion. He's now saying I hate politics and we are confusing Wanjiko, and they're not clear. And you've just agreed to that fact that there's been a lot that's been said about what we want in a referendum, from presidential parliamentary system, 50%, 40%, and now we, like you say, you're still crystallizing that. When will we have a crystallized form that we say, that we'll hear from court saying, this is the referendum, we want you to vote on 3, 4, 5 things? When will we get that clear message?
As I told you, we have a team that is professionally looking at the whole thing, and very soon we shall have everything that framed into one, even attempting to put what the question would be like, so that our people can begin to take the message down, and they understand it, and that confusion will be removed. I am not saying that at the moment we have a fine-tuned, a very clear document, but we are working towards that, and given a little time, we shall be done.
Okay. And
even we have cautioned our members of parliament also to get a correct message first, so that we don't have these confusions and whenever they have their meetings and people talk about issues, and because we haven't yet done what you're asking me, completed, we haven't completed, then we don't want them to just be speaking out of...
because we've already been seeing those statements.
That's it. So we have moved to correct that situation.
Okay. And the IEBC, you will be happy with it conducting the referendum, or will you make some changes to it before that?
We are saying if it's you see, it is only one question, hopefully, in the referendum, as opposed to conducting a six based election. We are still assessing the areas that we feel that if it is possible for a reform to be done, even maybe within the short time before referendum, some of it can be achieved either through parliament, should be able to be done. If not, then I think a communication will also be given on that going forward.
Okay. Senator, your final words on this one. two things, perhaps. We're now hearing, and it's on page 2 of the Star this morning, that the National Assembly is looking to have another amendment to the laws in the way in which governors conduct their business, and they want the governors to consult members of National Assembly, in essence making the constituency a very important part of devolution. And I'm guessing this will be another battlefront for that. But there's all this rhetoric that's going on, and very many people are saying, well, when it comes to devolution and those services, because we're arguing about money, we're arguing about functions, we're arguing now about, referendum, but a lot of Kenyans are saying, so when will we see the work being done? What are your final thoughts on that?
I have reiterated here that we were elected to serve the people, not to be lords upon them. That is Chapter 6 of the Constitution. I think the supremacy issue between National Assembly and Senate, we have committed ourselves yesterday, and our National Executive committed itself based on politics, in terms of we have the leadership of two houses to whip our members, to forget any fight for space and power that is likely to distract the business. And by the way, the only people who have brought this problem to where we are is the two houses. Yeah, it has as Parliament collectively. Code, Jubilee, doesn't matter, are the ones who have now created all this tension. Because if we had worked amicably and respected each other, respected the institution of the Senate and it's working, we would not have had this problem. Within the next 7 days, the Deputy President and the President will be working on how to bring our leadership together and try to do away with the acrimonious relationship in the first place. And I want to assure Kenyans that from the tone, the promises, our commitment, my commitment as a senator, not necessarily from Jubilee, is that I'll work with my National Assembly members to ensure that we deliver and respect every institution. That the amendments that are going to occur in legislation, we are going to agree also as parties. And I'm really hoping from my brother from COD that they can also speak to their members, because they can sometimes be very erratic, so that we all together do certain things for national interest.
Okay, all right. Thank you both for making the time to be with us, and we hope that we'll get these issues crystallized and Kenyans will have a way forward regarding a referendum in this country, or not, as the case may be between both houses, and we will be watching this. Thank you both for your time. We've been speaking with Senator Kipchumba Kormen from Elgeyo Marakwet County, and Magerer, who's the Executive Director of the Orange Democratic Movement, on the referendum. Your feedback is still coming in. Remember, that is our question of the day. We were asking you if you support that call for a referendum to increase the revenue allocation to counties, and we will carry on giving you your feedback, because we've got lots more to come after the break, so do stay with us.